This isn't a common occurrence. And with more and more evidence coming out day by day by day by day, this same passion that we saw from Mitch, why isn't we seeing that passion that he has here, that he seemed to have right after this historical event to protect democracy, to actually seeing that our democracy is physically protected, and why we failed to physically protect our democracy when people went in and delayed the certification of the results with bombs, with beatings, and going through police lines. How can you make all these calls to patriotism, but then you have one chance during the Biden administration to do something bipartisan in defense of our democracy, something that we are looking at as an actual defense of democracy, because you physically had to flee the room. And they can't do it. They can't buck the Trump cult for a moment. A crucial Senate bill to create an independent inquiry to investigate the deadly January 6th Capitol Hill riot failed Friday, falling short of the 10 Republican votes needed to advance and illustrating GOP efforts to move on from the insurrection that left 5 people dead and injured over 140 police officers. Let me just say, that thin blue line that everyone talked about, they were quick to scrub it out when it was politically advantageous. Oh my God. 140 injured cop from these rioters? Nah. We don't need to look into it. We don't need to look into it at all. Oh, hey, Supreme, how's it going? The vote was 54 to 35, showing the bill had a bipartisan majority of support. Sorry, the thing's a little... I hate how OBS works. With 6 Republicans voting with Democrats, however, the bill needed 60 votes to advance. The 6 GOP backers were Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Rob Portman of Ohio, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Ben Sasse of Nebraska. Okay. 9 Republican senators and 2 Democrats didn't vote. Now, Kyrsten Sinema were one of those Democrats. Now, we can like lambaste them or whatever, the Democrats that didn't show up, but we needed 60 and we weren't getting 60. So, the first thing I want to say here is this is another example of how the filibuster and how it's mutated to destroy clearly needed objectives that is bipartisan supported on a bipartisan basis, and it destroys them and mashes them until you can adhere to the demands of the most radical people in either the Republican Party and sometimes even in the Democratic Party, but most of the time benefiting the Republican Party. What we have with the Senate is something that is anti-majoritarian, supposed to spread out with senators to make it so you needed 2 from each state. You needed at least 50 votes from the Senate to get anything through. It's already an anti-majoritarian measure. That's already what the Senate exists as. If we were just doing population, all we would need is Congress. There's a lot of democracies in the world that participate and work that way. But on top of that, this wasn't designed by the founders. We decided, for whatever dumb reason, to add the filibuster as another measure, and another anti-majoritarian measure on top of an institution that is already anti-majoritarian by design, which by default is going to cause gridlock. The biggest thing that slowed down the civil rights movement was the filibuster, many times propped up by Dixiecrats in the South and a bunch of racists. Usually those two groups had a lot of overlap. And once again, when it comes to the crucial things this country needs, whether it was the $15 minimum wage, whether it was this vote, or any other thing we're trying to get through, we have to do it through budget reconciliation, because due to this backwards system we now call the filibuster, we don't even know if it will be properly even reformed. We're not even having the conversation anymore of having it gotten rid of completely when it comes to like the Biden administration pursuing it. We watered it down to reform, and even that is on the chopping block. This is a prime example on how you can't just keep putting barriers on systems that are anti-majoritarian in nature, one on top of the other. Because eventually, the more you do that, it just becomes a system that's going to be prone to frequent gridlock. And we're already a country that's incredibly divided, so it only makes it worse. That's the first thing I want to say about this situation. The second thing I want to say about the situation is, oh my God. Do you guys remember Benghazi? I'm sorry, I am going to say it. They ran around the block on Benghazi with the investigations, the hearings, everything, man. They milked that content cow to death. Nothing was coming out of that udder by dust by the end of it. Just dust. It was so bad, so much dust was coming out of that udder by the end of it, that the people in the general vicinity of that cow were choking. They had to open up the windows because it was getting too dusty in there. Nothing, man. They got nothing on Hillary. She was clean. Hillary herself testified, which, by the way, I just want to say, she testified. The Republicans never let John Bolton testify, and Trump sure as hell never testified on any of the issues that that he was on the impeachment trial for. Just want to bring that up. Maybe, you know, Hillary just is a little bit more, I don't know, ballsy than Trump is when it comes to, you know, criticism or being under the magnifying glass. And I'm no Hillary fan. I just want to throw that out there, that she actually testified in that witch hunt. We sat here and listened to that nonsense go on and on and on. And then the 2020 election comes around. Now, Trump says before the election that if I lose, it's rigged anyway, right? There's the Dominion voting nonsense. There's all this nonsense. And you know what? Our system, we had to stand here and watch trial after trial after trial as Rudy Giuliani brought the whole Munchkin gang behind him. Of freaks and weirdos to stand up and talk about things that never happened, that they saw, but don't worry, they have the magic document, they have a signed affidavit, so we have to all listen to it. And case after case after case failed. No one died, just failed. Then the Capitol is stormed. 140 cops are injured. 5 are dead in the aftermath. Bombs were planted in DC. People were calling for the execution of the vice president. Media was assaulted. People bashed in the windows, broke through police lines. People were communicating through headpieces. They got in, they broke in. And there seems, as more time goes on, to be more and more signs of much of it being coordinated. Even though a lot of it was, denied at the start. There was the zip cuffs, everything. People are dead. People are injured. There were suicides in the aftermath. And the certification of our election was delayed. And a lot of the strong language we saw from Republicans like Mitch McConnell. Can we see? Does anybody have the link to the Mitch McConnell speech after the January 6th riots? And I'm sorry if I'm a little angry, a little peeved about this, but actually having been there, getting called slurs and threatened with execution just because I disagreed with these people on who I voted for. Some people in that crowd were calling me a traitor. A traitor because I had a Biden hoodie on, and in the background I see people rushing in to the Capitol building with Confederate flags. It took all the way to 2020 for 2021 actually, for the Confederates to get a flag in the White House, but they did it. Did I see any Antifa there? It was me. It was all me. I was the Antifa coordinator. This one, yes, the Mitch McConnell speech. Listen to his language in this.
Majority Leader.
Let me play this. This is what Mitch McConnell spoke of right afterward when the whole nation, the world, was in shock.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
We're debating a step that has never been taken in American history. Whether Congress should overrule the voters and overturn a presidential election. I've served 36 years in the Senate. This will be the most important vote I've ever cast. President Trump claims the election was stolen. The assertions range from specific local allegations to constitutional arguments to sweeping conspiracy theories. I supported the president's right to use the legal system. Dozens of lawsuits received hearings in courtrooms all across our country. But over and over, the courts rejected these claims, including all-star judges whom the president himself has nominated. Every election, we know, features some illegality and irregularity, and of course, that's unacceptable. I support strong state-led voting reforms. Last year's bizarre pandemic procedures must not become the new norm. But my colleagues, nothing before us proves illegality anywhere near the massive scale that would have tipped the entire election. Nor can public doubt alone justify a radical break when the doubt itself was incited without any evidence. The Constitution gives us here in Congress a limited role. We cannot simply declare ourselves a national board of elections on steroids. The voters, the courts, and the states have all spoken.
Listen to them.
They've all spoken.
Screw the big lie. The big lie is nonsense.
If we overrule them, it would damage our republic forever. This election actually was not unusually close.
True.
Just in recent history, 1976, 2000, and 2004 were all closer than this one. The Electoral College margin is almost identical to what it was in 2016. If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral. We'd never see the whole nation accept an election again. Every 4 years, it'd be a scramble for power at any cost. The Electoral College, which most of us on this side have been defending for years, would cease to exist, leaving many of our states with no real say at all in choosing a president. The effects would go even beyond the elections themselves. Self-government, my colleagues, requires a shared commitment to the truth and a shared respect for the ground rules of our system. We cannot keep drifting apart into two separate tribes with a separate set of facts and separate realities, with nothing in common except our hostility towards each other and mistrust for the few national institutions that we all still share. Every time, in the last 30 years that Democrats have lost the presidential race, they've tried a challenge just like this, after 2000, after 2004, after 2016. After 2004, a senator joined and forced the same debate, and believe it or not, Democrats like Harry Reid, Dick Durbin, and Hillary Clinton praised them and applauded the stunt.
Okay.
Republicans condemned those baseless efforts back then, and we just spent 4 years condemning Democrats' shameful attacks on the validity of President Trump's own election. So look, there can be no double standard.
I'm waiting for the line, because he says today, one line that I really want to highlight.
4 years aiding and abetting Democrats' attacks on our institutions after they lost. But we must not imitate and escalate what we repudiate. Our duty is to govern for the public good. The United States Senate has a higher calling than an endless spiral of partisan vengeance. Congress will either override the voters, overrule them, the voters, the states, and the courts for the first time ever, or honor the people's decision. We'll either guarantee Democrats' delegitimizing efforts after 2016 become a permanent new routine for both sides, or declare that our nation deserves a lot better than this. We'll either hasten down a poisonous path where only the winners of election actually accept the results, or show we can still muster the patriotic courage that our forebears showed, not only in victory but in defeat. The framers built the Senate to stop short-term passions from boiling over and melting the foundations of our republic. So I believe protecting our constitutional order requires respecting the limits of our own power.
Where's the line?
It would be unfair and wrong to disenfranchise American voters and overrule the courts and the states on this extraordinarily thin basis. And I will not pretend such a vote would be a harmless protest gesture while relying on others to do the right thing. I will vote to respect the people's decision and defend our system of government as we know it.
So we just listened to the speech sped up. I was looking for this line. It was something along the lines like, I will not be intimidated by thugs. Maybe it was Lindsey Graham. Maybe I got it mixed up. But point still stands. We must do this patriotic duty. We must defend the vote. This is of the people, etc., etc., etc. So much passion. Well, as much passion as Mitch McConnell can somehow get out of his throat. Somehow not getting caught in the wrinkles. Goes up. Yet, he doesn't whip a single vote or get anyone in line to have a commission on what happened on January 6th, where people died, cops were injured, bombs were planted, media was assaulted, death threats were done, and if he wants to protect democracy, what about the delaying of the certification of the results of the election? This isn't a common occurrence. And with more and more evidence coming out day by day by day by day, this same passion that we saw from Mitch, why isn't we seeing that passion that he has here, that he seemed to have right after this historical event to protect democracy, to actually seeing that our democracy is physically protected, and why we failed to physically protect our democracy when people went in and delayed the certification of the results with bombs, with beatings, and going through police lines. How can you make all these calls to patriotism, but then you have one chance during the Biden administration to do something bipartisan in defense of our democracy, something that we are looking at as an actual defense of democracy, because you physically had to flee the room. And they can't do it. They can't buck the Trump cult for a moment.
A curd is a curd.
That big lie narrative has sponsored voter suppression bills all across the country. That big lie narrative is becoming more and more and more accepted. That big lie narrative, which he is fighting tooth and nail here, got Liz Cheney out of her position. Not because she has bad policies, but because she wouldn't adhere to the Trump cult. He, for a second, seemed like somebody who actually maybe cared the smidgen, the tiniest bit about our so-called republic. But right when it came to actually putting that to the test, he failed. He failed to show a smidgen of leadership. And all the things that we're scared about when it comes to elections in the future in this country, all the tensions that need to cool, all the reviews and analysis that needs to be done to make sure that doesn't happen again, that the certification isn't delayed, or next time maybe the protesters are a little faster. Maybe Mitt Romney won't be corrected when he's running directly into the crowd by a cop at the last second and he does get captured by the crowd. Maybe the zip ties are used. Maybe when they go to Nancy Pelosi's office next time, she will be there. Maybe next time when they pick up letters and laptops and all this other information from offices, it isn't just, oh snap, thank goodness they didn't get anything important in. Oh, this is classified information. Maybe I can sell this. Maybe next time the bombs go off, Maybe next time it isn't 5 people dead, it's 10, 20, 30. Maybe next time, instead of just smashing the media's cameras, they smash the media. Maybe next time when they threaten people with execution, they deliver that as a promise. How are we even ever going to confront what truly happened if we can't even review and investigate how this happened, as more and more information about Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and coordination and extensive damage and more injuries, and as this information comes out and the picture gets grimmer and grimmer, how are we going to stop something like this from happening again? How are we going to make sure this thing is a one-time fluke and not becoming an American political tradition that every 2 to 4 years everybody goes to the Capitol, tries to storm it, whether that be state capitol or national capitol, wherever, or goes to perhaps where the votes are being counted and tries to storm the building because you didn't like who won. Democracy doesn't work if one of the 2 major parties doesn't believe they can lose. With the removal of Liz Cheney, with the denial of this commission, with voter suppression laws being pushed everywhere, and the big lie being promoted more and more as more conspiracy theorists and hardliners infest the party of old Abe Lincoln, it's very hard to see the Republican Party as a party of adherence to democracy. Mitch McConnell's been in the Senate and been in politics for a very long time. He is a political expert, and he is a devious strategist. He is not stupid enough to not see what's going on, but he is cowardly enough and soulless enough to not do anything about it. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Anyway, I did want to cover this. The Republican opposition highlights the hold former President Donald Trump still has on most of his party, and underscores a deep partisan divide surrounding the fallout of the attack on the U.S. Capitol, a point Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made following the vote. The New York Democrats of the Republican minority just mounted a partisan filibuster against an independent commission to report on January 6th. By the way, the reason that Mitch McConnell didn't whip people to vote for this bipartisan legislation was because it was some BS reason about, oh, well, the person who heads the commission, we don't want it to be like a Democrat. And then, boom, crashed the whole thing. That is his excuse. That is not his actual justification. His justification is strategic, political, don't piss off the Trump base, want to make sure we start tilting in favor of the Trump cult. Because the thing is, if he legitimately had concerns about who was going to be heading the commission, you know what he could have done? Hey, Chuck, we'll vote for this if you, if we talk about who's going to head the commission. It was that simple. But he didn't do that because his goal was never to actually have a productive commission or have the commission at all. The goal was just to find an excuse to tank it. And all the actual political excuses he could have used weren't good ones. So he made a procedural excuse. One that could have easily been fixed. Am I interested in one day running for political office? I mean, every day I see stuff like this, a little bit less, but hopefully one day, who knows? Anyway, I wanted to talk about this. I thought it was important. I didn't want to forget to talk about this. This is like a significant thing that happened.